to the chase. I'm in a basement bathroom where this guy wants this glass-like penny tile put down everywhere, it seems like. This is not my first choice in tile as far as like setting it, dealing with it, especially on a shower floor and all these other areas. However, he has already set this tile on the shower floor. In fact, I think he did most of the prep himself. So the shower floor is kind of small and has the little slope going along the side. I can clearly see that water is going to not pool anywhere, go down to the drain properly, and he used a square drain, which is okay. A couple of areas that he didn't get close enough to, which is okay. Looks like little Pac-Man there, and there's some spacing there. Don't know that I'll be able to correct that. I might try to cut this one a little closer to the drain and a couple of these closer to the drain. Small potatoes. Other than that, it's a really good prep. The tile are solidly down. I probably would have grouted by now. However, he set these. I'm not seeing any of the Thinset popping up in between where the grout lines are supposed to be, which is excellent. That's the hardest thing about setting a small tile like this. But at the end of the day, the prep is really good. It's nice and flat for the most part. It's nice and flat and even, and you know, it's looking good so far. So the issue, I think the bigger issue, is that putting this on the curb and having the edges here, the edges kind of lining up to the edges, one way or the other, there's going to be a factory edge showing. Although I might be doing schluter trim on the curb, I'm not sure. I know he bought quite a few of them. Yeah, so I might be doing schluter trim. He has already pre-cut these. It just so happens that they work perfectly on the curb. And yeah, so he's also done the bench top. So yeah, we got the schluter on the bench top. We have enough room here up under the schluter facilitate the field tile, which is this ceramic. It's gonna go right up under there. We left enough room for Thinset, which is wonderful. I like this prep. Normally, I'm not really into other people's prep, but in this case, it's not too bad. As I said, this is going to be the field tile. I think this is a either a 4x9. I think it's a 4x9 ceramic tile. We're not sure yet. These tiles have little spacers built into them to give you a 16th inch spacing, and I'm not sure yet if we're going to go with that, which would be the easiest way. I think they mentioned they have a darker grout and they want a larger grout line, so we may or may not do that. They have to make that decision, but it's going to go on the face, it's going to go up from the wall all the way to the ceiling, on this wall all the way up to the ceiling, this wall all the way to the ceiling, and it will be finished off with some schluter both on left and right in line. Yeah, I think what he wanted was a schluter here, and then there's going to be a little extra tile on the outside where the schluter meets the schluter. Yeah, so that's going to look like that, and then there'll be one piece that will line up with the top of there down to the bottom of the curb. So that's his idea. It looks kind of sharp, a little busy, not too bad though. So he did all the pre-cuts on the floor. None of this has been set yet. I want to go over very quickly about penny tile. Ooh, I can show you better. Penny tile is very kind of flimsy. So it's great for a backsplash, say in a kitchen or somewhere where you have a nice flat wall. But anytime you have a discrepancy, whether it's a little hump or it's a little dip, it's going to follow that discrepancy. So your surface must be as flat as possible in order for this to really set right, which is why I give kudos to him for his floor, his shower pan floor, and the fact that there is none of that Thinset pushing up between the lines. Also, when you screed out your Thinset with your trowel, small notch trowel, and you do it kind of at an angle and push this down with a float, and you're getting it as close to the floor as possible without getting all the Thinset up between the grout lines. So it's a little problematic for that reason alone and this reason alone. hump, and now we have dip. And I don't know if you can see on this camera, you see that dip over there? So it's right there, and then you have another one here, and it goes way up over there. So if I push on that, yeah, kind of teeter-totters, and it's going to be that way. It's going to be that way on this entire floor, really. There's going to be some dips going on, which really can't be corrected at this point. So know that, and he's okay with this floor the way it is, regardless and despite that there's some dips and humps and stuff like that. But this tile ultimately has to sit as close to the floor as possible, which is very important to know. Like I said, any inconsistencies is going to follow that. I can do my Thinset screeding in such a way that it takes care of some of that, but I can't fill in a large gap like we had over there or up there enough to where that's flat, because yeah, you're chasing your tail. You fill that in, then that's not, yeah. Anyway, he's okay. This is set so very well. The dry fit is just perfect. He's okay with the floor the way it is, but if you wanted to, whoops, we got some boogers going on. I'm gonna have to fill those gaps in with some Thinset before I start. In theory, if you didn't have to worry about your entrance, which is right here, and he's gonna put a wood strip along there. If you didn't have to worry about your entrance, in theory, you could come in here with level quick. And if you didn't have to worry about your drain flange as well, you could come in here with level quick and let it do its thing, and it will flatten very nicely. In fact, this entire floor, get it all level, get it all flat, fill in all your gaps and all that stuff, and that would be a good way to go about it. But then you have to also take into account that it's going to raise your floor up at your entrance a little bit. So that's the way to go about it. Anyway, just wanted to kind of put that information out there. I think it's very important to know all of this stuff prior to you trying to set some of this penny tile. As I said, kudos to him for doing that and that. He did an outstanding job. He just wasn't comfortable doing the rest of it, and that's why I'm here. And that's all I have to say. Just wanted to kind of go through that. Oh, this is the choices that they have. So this is with the natural spacing. This would be 1/16 inch spacing. Basically, I think it's going to be, in fact, the same color grout. This is extra grout that I had, DeLorean gray. And then this is 1/8. And I think 1/8, my personal opinion, a little too thick. It just kind of stands out a lot more because of the contrast. But, you know, either which way, I'm going to be doing that or I'm going to be doing this. All right, so when I was last on camera, I was just kind of showing the layout and everything that's going on in here, and I'm going to get back to that shortly. I was going to actually show me laying this tile floor, this penny tile floor, but on the day I laid it, I forgot my camera, as it was, you know, so there's nothing I can do about that now, but I'm going to go through and explain some things because I think some people are interested in penny tile. I'm going to say this first and foremost. If you do penny tile, you must understand whether it's a shower pan or a flat surface, or the surface must be pristine. Like, it would be perfect for a wall, for a backsplash in a kitchen. It would be perfect for any surface, a floor even, you know, whether it be on this floor, this concrete floor, if it was perfectly flat and level, there are no bumps or humps or anything like that, it would be perfect for that. If it's not a perfect application, if it's not a perfect surface, if you can't do anything to rectify that perfect surface, it will follow every inconsistency there is. If there's a dip, it'll follow it. It's very kind of flimsy tile. Not all tile is created equal. This one isn't too bad, but you'll know because some of it's paper backing, which really is horrid to work with. Once it gets wet, all these tile are going to fall off of this backing. This one isn't too bad, although when it gets wet, it does have a tendency of, yeah, they fall off there. And some of them aren't as thick as this one. And so if you're going to do it, get a better quality, spend a little bit more for better quality penny tile. So there are a lot of things that play into penny tile. One of the reasons I don't like it is because you're always kind of making little tiny cuts like this all around everywhere, all around the drain, all around everywhere. And it's just a very, very time consuming process. Plus, in the past, I've had prep that was done really bad. And in this case, some of this prep wasn't the best. It was doable. As I said earlier on the video, this floor is not perfectly flat and level, but the customer was okay with it. It was flat enough. And what did I do? So those cracks that were in there, I went ahead, did I show that? I don't remember if I showed that. I went ahead and I set Thinset in all those cracks. I pulled up all this tile, since it was already pre-planned by the customer, and set it somewhere else for the time being. And then I filled in all those cracks, and I red guarded the surface of this because I don't want those cracks to transfer up through the tile at a future date. That wasn't something I was asked to do. That's just something I did for due diligence reasons. Having said that, it's still not flat and level, but you know, I did the best I could with what I had. A lot of the shower, most of the shower, all of the shower was prepped prior to me arriving. So we're going to get into that in a minute. But yeah, I did the best I could on there too, and I'm going to talk about some things on here in a second. But to the point of setting this tile, as I said, it follows everything. You can see this is kind of bumped up. Why? Because there's something underneath it. Even a small little piece of something will cause that one tile, you see, that one little 3 set of tile to bump up. Just a tiny little piece like that will cause you problems. So yes, you have to be very careful, which is why I want to do my own prep if I'm going to be doing penny tile. Another thing about this, again, this isn't a bad quality tile. When you take these apart, they all line up with no lines showing, right? And so that's what you're looking for at the very end of the day when it's in the package like this and you see, yeah. So when you take it out of the package, and you only got to take a couple of them out because they're not all created equal. When you take them out of the package and you notice that everything lines up perfectly with no lines showing, like it's one contiguous piece, you know you have a good tile. That's why I suggest taking a couple out of the package when you buy them and making sure that there's no lines showing. The danger you can get into, and I think they got into that here, is that if you're going to do it side by side, that these have to line up perfectly. If they're off just a tad, you're going to see a line on the edge rather than these little indentation pieces that are taken out. You're going to see a line on that edge, and we have one in there the way that it was. Well, you can't see it too much now because I grouted already, but yesterday that line showed up pretty well. Not much I could do about that. It was already pre-planned, pre-positioned where everything would go, and I just transferred it back to the floor later on. So that's something to know also. As I said, these line up really, really well together, so I don't have a problem with that. And I'm going to get to laying this in just a second, but I want to talk about, oh, here we go. So this is where the straight edge meaning there's no knockouts of little pieces. The straight edges line up. The danger you get into, you start doing that, is it's going to be offset. You see how this isn't straight? It's offset. And it's offset because there's none of this going on. Make sense? Right. So that's the danger you get into. You must almost always have to do it this way, with you know, like a flat edge here, without these little, yeah. So enough said about that. I'm gonna take these off. And cutting these is easier to do from the back. You know, if you actually have to make one of these to fit one of these, you have to do your math really well, figure out which ones you're going to cut out. Take a razor knife on the back end and just go around like that. It's going to be much easier than cutting it from the front. Speaking of cutting, when it's in the package and you already know that you have to cut something, you take a tape measure and figure if you have 5 inches, for example, that you need to cut on. All right, so at that 5-inch mark, from the very top, you make a line. To the very bottom, you make a line, and you run where that line is and where that line is straight onto your wet saw in the package. Don't take it out. it's much easier to do it this. It gives the tile, the individual pieces, stiffness so that they don't get caught inside of the trough here. Run it right through and then take it out of the package. That alone is worth watching the video on, because people will struggle if they don't know some of this stuff. So let me get, oh, I have an old, used to be very old, used to be a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch square notch trowel. That's my choice. You're gonna not necessarily do the smallest trowel available, because if you do that, you're not going to have enough thinset. But if you do a larger trowel, the danger is when you start pushing these tile down, that thinset pops up between the grout lines. Trust me, you don't want that happening, because you're going to spend half of your day trying to take a little screwdriver and get all that thinset out, and heaven forbid you should let it set up overnight. Yeah, you're done. So that's definitely not the way you want to go. Now, you see how this floor is all gummed up and everything with the old tile that used to be here, right? So simply, oh, your thinset's going to be a little runnier than normal. This is not ideal thinset that I would use. I might start out this way, but the idea, especially on concrete, it's going to suck up a lot of moisture, and you could wet down the concrete prior to, but general idea is to try and get, wish I had a cameraman sometimes. The general idea is try and get, they're somewhere between too thick of a line and too thin of a line. So if you hold your trowel at like a 45-degree angle, that's about enough. That's about the size of the thinset you want. This is not what you want right here. Bring that down. All right, now you're ready to lay the tile. And so that would go right there. You're not doing anything yet. You're making sure they line up. Another little trick with this type of tile, or any type of mosaic, is sliding it on the tile you just set so that you're not gumming up the next piece. Same as this one. So let's just slide that down, and it helps with the one hand thing too. And then the last piece, I don't know if I have enough thinset here. Yeah, gummed up the last part of that. Yeah, that's the danger you can get into if you have your thinset too thick. And you notice there was, yeah, there was a hole here, and so the thinset's kind of thick there. And that's as easy as it is. You're gonna do an area as far as you can reach. Generally speaking, that's how I do it. Once that area is done, you come back and you just gently tap down with a float. Yeah, any flat surface type of thing will work, but a float is much easier. And you're literally pushing the back of this tile into the thinset. And then the next day, everything's adhered. There's not one of these penny tile that should ever come up. I've been walking on this for the last couple of hours, you know, including all the grouting and all that stuff, and none of them come loose. And so that's probably the easiest way that I could show you on how to set it. And had I done a video on setting this tile, you would have seen a repetition of this over and over and over. But again, like I said, don't put too much thinset in. This will be the danger. This will have you hating penny tile forever and ever and ever. So when I pull this up, you're going to clearly see that everything got thinset on it. Right? There's only a few of these tile that had about half thinset, but most of them got a good amount of thinset, and that's ultimately what you're looking for. See that? Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly the way I want it set when I'm doing it. So Another suggestion is if you do, and I already mentioned this during the prep portion, if you do have dips and, you know, cracks and things like this, as this concrete had, like that, right? You would fill all those in, as I told you earlier that I filled all those cracks in, including a lot of the damage that was done to the floor. Filled all that in first, got it as pristine as possible so that I don't run into setting tile into dips and stuff like that. It's just little things, but you know, it really truly does matter, and it helps. So what I said earlier about cutting the tile inside of the packaging, that's how I got those little half cuts done, to where I didn't have to put in little tiny individual pieces, you know. So this curb isn't perfect, meaning that it's kind of cockeyed that way, but it is sloped inward. And what I was given was, when he put this schluter piece in here, this trim, this profile, that's what I have to deal with. So the profile ended up on the sides here, both here and the left side, obviously, and on the curb. Well, the profiles come in a little bit smaller size, which I would have preferred if I had gone out and gotten all the material. That's what I've gotten. That's what I would have gotten. So you end up with the profile raising just a tad, a bit above where it should be on both sides of the curb. Not a big deal, but something that I don't particularly like. So I'll probably taper off a little bit more grout on that edge there, just to get it more flush. What else? But the curb is sloped in, so that's good. Oh, I think you noticed, or I pointed out in the first video, that some of these tile weren't cut good coming around here. So I took out, I think, about half a dozen of these pieces, and I set them in there properly so they're a little bit closer up to the drain. Had I done this all the way around and it had been me, I would have given myself a little less grout line there. It's about a quarter inch grout line. And here's what I was talking about on this trim. It's obviously got a little lip on it, which I don't like, but it was already done prior to me, so it is what it is. And then the rest of it's just, you know, tile. Here. So people have nippers, people have grinders, people have different ways of cutting tile. I always use a wet saw, almost always, especially on smaller tile, because you're not going to get a curvature cut like that with nippers and stuff like that. And although you might be successful with nippers on that, it's highly unlikely. So if you're doing a small job, get a small wet saw, you know, do the best you can with it. But this is going to serve you well to make cuts on these little tiny tile. It's just not going to work with manual tools. Not nicely anyway, not correctly. You're going to booger up a lot of your tile. And so that is another hint. Definitely have a wet saw. It doesn't have to be a big one, but that will save you a lot of time and aggravation. All right, I am finished with this bathroom. It turned out pretty nice. I don't know how well you can see it. As I said before, it's not level, so you might see a little bit of humps going on and stuff like that. So one of the things I want to talk about is prep. Prep matters. And so I've had people hand me a job with the prep done already, as this customer did. Oh, I misspoke on the shower pan. The shower pan is one of those foam pans. I think what he told me he did is he added a little extra Thinset up on that back edge, which I don't know why, on top of the shower pan, so it made things a little cockeyed. But you know, I think he just wanted a really hard slope into the drain. So I had to deal with his prep. I had to deal with his wall prep because the walls weren't perfect. And with this staggered tile like this, it kind of has to be as perfect as possible. So I've had customers hand me jobs where they've done the prep. Sometimes it's really good. Most of the times it's not. So if you're trying to save money, don't hand me the prep. Let me do the prep, and then you do the tile. It's a lot easier for you to do tile for the most part. Even if you mess things up, it's still your own job. But it's a lot easier to do tile than it is to do the prep correctly so that I can follow the prep with my tile. That's a little bit more difficult, even to the point where the bench wasn't built exactly. It was a 1/4 inch off. There's a little 1/4 inch slope going that way. As I said, there was a slope coming that way, which is good. but that 1/4 inch threw me off. So that's my first row of tile right above the bench. And then as it goes around, I had to shave off and shave off. And you won't notice it because it kind of blends in, because it was intentional to make it blend in. But I'm going to point it out to you. So this 1/4 inch discrepancy that we have ended up being here. If you notice, there is an offset tile. So all of these tile were cut by just shy of a 1/4 inch in order to make that 1/4 inch discrepancy work. So it transfers right there, you see. So there's that 1/4 inch that ended up being there going around. So I did the best I could, and it's not awful bad, but I still would have rather done the prep myself because I know how I'm going to end up doing tile. We did the schluter trim, a little dusty, on the edge, all the way around, all the way down, as well as the curve and the bench. So really that's about all I have to say about penny tile. Oh, one other thing, and listen, that's just, I noticed that as I was doing the tile work, it's just like hollow, and that's why I kind of had a heads up that that was a foam pan and not a floated pan. So with this, with penny tile, when you're putting grout on it, it still has to be wiped off. When you're putting grout on it, you're going to end up with a lot of bubbles. Bubbles meaning that right there in the grout. There's a couple in the shower too that I saw. Anyway, those bubbles are just air bubbles that never really quite, and you're going to chase those bubbles, and it's not a good idea to chase them, meaning that you're going to keep on trying to put grout in there and sponging it off, and you're just going to be chasing. So the better thing to do, wait for everything to dry, then come in with a little dab of grout like that, where all those little bubbles are, like that, like that, like that. So you kind of get the idea. Don't chase your bubbles. Do them afterward. It's going to save you a lot of time and aggravation later on, or while you're doing it anyway. And then you can just sponge everything off. Yeah, not too bad. My customer is really happy with the end result. There are some things that I don't like about it, but at the end of the day, I don't live here, and so as long as he's happy, I'm happy, and I'm out.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video and you learned something, consider being a Patreon member. $5, $10, $15 a month would help me greatly produce more videos. I make nothing from YouTube at all. If you're gonna call me for advice, please donate $50 for 30 minutes. My link to my PayPal and my Patreon account is down below. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get immediate notifications as soon as I post videos. And thank you very much for your support.